Hello humans and welcome to the Felix Ben Show. I am your host Felix and this is a brand new podcast experiment where I bring you in-depth conversations with the world's best Latin dance artists, teachers and innovators who have helped impact the industry as we know it all around the world and who can hopefully impact your life and your experience right now by talking directly into your ear. In this episode, I sit down with someone who was there even before there was anywhere to be. This lady has some stories to tell. She's quite a character and of course a salsa legend. I would like to introduce you to Edie the Salsa Freak. We covered so much right from the beginning of the salsa movement around the 90s when the internet started to the biggest names and some interesting insights and stories Edie's got to tell, to her views around learning, training and developing as a dancer. I wish I had a glass of wine for this interview because Edie has some really great, candid stories and views to share with us. So now, please enjoy this in-depth look into the life and ideas of Edie the Salsa Freak. So again, thank you so much for getting up so early to talk to me and explore a bit of your history and your wealth of salsa knowledge and experience together. So I have personally followed you along for a while. It's actually fascinating for me because I did, I started about 10 years ago as a beginner.
Yeah.
And so just at that time, as I looked around and somehow you were there, I don't know where and how. And over all the years, you've continued to sort of be there. And it's been really cool to now be able to chat to you. Because obviously I realized there's a reason why you were there, and I noticed you because you were, already a legend and had already done a lot of stuff in the industry. And that's my idea, is to talk to people here that, really have something to offer and have a wealth of knowledge to share with others that may not readily get access to them and may not spend hours on YouTube when they're a beginner like I did, getting to know all the people. So that's what this is about. So thank you for talking to me.
Absolutely. It's an absolute honor and privilege. There's very few people like you who are actually, interested in the history and what happened and why things became the way they did, etc. So 10 years ago when you started, that was when I pretty much retired from the traveling circuit, and now I'm just at home. I teach my little class once per week, and it's just amazing.
Fantastic. So maybe that's a good place to start, which is how things came to be the way they were. So maybe we just start with the very basics, which is your name. How did the Salsa Freak come about? There has to be a story.
Yeah, there is. When it was right when the internet came out in 1996, 97. And that was, how old were you back then?
96. This is a good question. So 98, I finished high school. So 96, I would have been 16.
Yeah. So about that time, I was working for the United States Air Force as a government contractor. And the internet was still in colleges and universities hooked up to the Air Force, military, not just the United States, but worldwide as well. So there was a very, like Caltech and MIT, they had their hands on the internet. They were very much associated with the things going on at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Edwards Air Force Base,
yes.
Back then. So when that law firm got a hold of the internet per se, and advertised their law firm business online, everybody got on the bandwagon and said, wow, we can advertise ours. That was after all the hoopla and the spamming and the DDoSing of their site. But they said, okay, well, Edie, it looks like it's going to be, apparent that the public is going to get their hands on this. So before the public does, let's have you study it and learn how to program HTML so that you can train us, the Air Force, on how to at least create a web page. And I said, okay. So I I started getting out the books and the training and whatnot, and we were using Linux systems at the time. And I started learning HTML programming to create a website. And at the same time, this was going so fast. There was a guy named Ben Rappaport who was in the movie industry who also wanted to build a website per se about salsa. And so while I was learning how to build sites for the military, I just started dancing salsa at the time. I started dancing in 1994. And so actually, or was it 93? Now I can't even remember. Anyway, I started dancing. I was really heavy into it. And when the military said, Edie, create a website, I said, well, what's the subject matter going to be? And they said, well, you just have to create something because right now you're just working on secret programs. We can't have you telling the world about our satellite systems. And I said, okay, so I'm going to create something about a hobby. And my hobby was salsa. And so I started to write articles about what was happening to me on the dance floor, during competitions, at classes. And I started writing, just blogging. At that time, it wasn't called blogging. It was just writing because it was writing for a magazine. And so as I was writing all these articles about this craziness that was going on with me, right now all the articles are at salsafreak.com in articles. I've transferred them over from Salsa Web to Dance Freak. This guy named Ben Rappaport we always loved dancing together. He said, hey, I'm creating a salsa website and you've got Salsa Freak with all your articles. I'm just doing a list of clubs in LA and you've got your articles. Let's get together and let's do a Reese's peanut butter cup thing and combine. And I said, okay, cool. So we did that. And he created this site called Salsa Web. And that was the world's first salsa site. And so I got my hands on it, and so did he. And we both had access to it. And I used that website to demonstrate to the military how to create a forum, back then it was like Facebook, okay? Except Facebook didn't come out till the 2000s. And so we created this salsa website. And because of that, he's after about a year or so, I think it was a year, he got caught up doing a movie. And so he was so involved in editing for movies that he just basically dumped it on me to keep up the site. So I said, no problem. But at the same time, people from Toronto were contacting me over email. We'd never heard of email before. And it's like, oh, look at this email thing. And I just got a whole list of clubs from Toronto. And I said, you mean they actually dance salsa in Toronto? I thought this was just an LA thing. I didn't even know that they dance salsa in Puerto Rico or Cuba or anything. Now, you have to remember back then, we only got information from National Geographic, books. We got information from watching television. And there wasn't any salsa dancing on television, that's for sure.
And so how did you get into it as a hobbyist even? I mean, that was very early in the day, sorry to interrupt. 93, that's super early. There were no, there weren't schools around. How did you how did you come across it?
Well, in Los Angeles, we had a very heavy Hispanic population, a lot of Colombians, not a lot of Puerto Ricans or Cubans. That was in New York. But we had a lot of Colombians, and they loved salsa. And in Argentina, they also danced salsa. So they would dance cumbia a lot. In Mexico, they dance cumbia, to their songs, Tex-Mex or whatever they dance over there. And so I said, okay, what happened? I was really overweight. I was like 170 pounds, and I'm only 5'2". Okay, so I think I can't remember what that is in centimeters, but I was really overweight. I was short and fat. Okay, and my husband was cheating on me, and I thought, I'm going to go cheat on him because you know how women are; they're very vengeful. And I said, I'm going to go find a guy to sleep with. And so I decided while my husband was out of town, this was my first husband, not Al, okay, and not my husband that I have now. So I've been married 3 times. Third time is definitely a charm. Anyway, when my husband would go out of town, my ex-husband, he would find these hookers to cheat with. And they would put their services on our American Express bill. And that's how I found out. And so I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to go cheat on my husband. So I went out to a rock and roll club, where they just do rock and roll, etc. And nobody would dance with me. Who wants to dance with a short, fat girl with short hair, right? And so I was like, okay, I am going to figure this shit out. And so I went again the next week while my husband would be out of town for months at a time. And that's how I got my degree. And that, I just went to night school. And so, because there was nothing really to do without him, right? And I didn't have a hobby or anything. All I did was work. I worked at SAIC, and they work you to death over there. I was putting in 10, 12 hours a day just working. It's a government contractor, heavy into aerospace and all that. Anyway, so he was out of town. I went to the same place, and that place turned into a salsa club literally overnight. There was nobody in there but me and this music. And I thought, I was so brokenhearted, for my husband. And I sat there. I don't drink, but I ordered a glass of wine because I guess that was the thing to do if you go out to a bar. I never went to bars, never went to clubs. I was just a workaholic, right? And because I went to school at night, worked during the day, and I had this glass of wine that I took one sip and I just sat there. And then we started seeing these couples coming in, and I thought, wow, who is this and what is this music? And I love it. And it was this strange, haunting music that I felt that I knew, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And I recognized the songs, but I had never heard them before. It was the weirdest thing. That's why now I really believe in reincarnation. I mean, heavy. So, anyway, so they started coming in and started dancing, and it was something that I needed. I wanted to, I couldn't get my hands on it, but when they started dancing, I had never seen this before. I had only seen country western dancing in Colorado places and hip hop, right? And I thought, wow, this is crazy. Why do I love this so much? And the music just seeped into the void in my heart, and it filled it to the brim, and I couldn't stop. And I sat there that night. Then I saw Luis Vasquez come in with his former wife, Joby Martinez, who is now Joby Brava. And they weren't married at the time. And I saw Jeanette Valenzuela. So the trio came in, and they started dancing up a storm like you would not believe. I mean, he had a cigarette. He put it out. He put his hand out, escorted his wife to the floor, and just started dancing. He ran his hands through her hair, while he was dancing with her, and he just he draped her body down. It was salsa, but it looked like what bachata is today. I mean, almost identical. And it was a very sensual, sexy salsa. And I didn't even know that they were dancing salsa. I didn't even know I was listening to salsa music. And then he did this to Jeanette. He said, hey, come here. And she came out to the floor while Joby was still there. And he danced with both of them at the same time. I mean, I was floored. He was dipping Joby, and then he was turning Jeanette while he dipped Joby, and he got her up, and then he put Joby behind him, and she had both of her hands on his shoulders while he was dancing with Jeanette. My mouth dropped to the floor. I almost fell off my chair. I was the sexiest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I thought, I have to do this. And so I couldn't. I didn't even know the basic step. And I just saw that, and I was almost crying, because it was so incredible. I'd never even seen this on television, And we called them televisions at the time, right? And so I was completely floored. And throughout the night, I just stayed the whole night. This gentleman came up to me. He must have been in his 50s at the time. I was how old was I? I was 30 years old. And he came up to me and he asked me to dance. I said, no, I don't know how. And he said, and I was afraid of touching another man because I was married, you know, and I wasn't cheating on my husband. I wanted to, but I was chickening out and I was too fat, right? And I thought, okay, well, I'll dance with this man. Apparently he wants to dance with me. And so he took me to the floor and I was stumbling. And he goes, don't worry about it. Just hold me really strong and close your eyes and move with my body. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm actually doing this. And I felt guilty and I felt ashamed and I felt I'm married, you know. But after about 2 minutes, it was like, okay, I'm married, but this is fine. And then he led me back to my chair. And then another man asked me to dance. And I went out there again. And I said, I don't know how to dance. And he goes, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. And they did this. So these Latin men were so gracious and so kind. And they were so warm. And I didn't feel as guilty anymore. Then I went out the next night and I asked the guy, I said, where's another place to go? And he goes, well, there's a place, you know, about 50 miles from here, but you can go in Los Angeles because LA is so big. And I said, okay. So I drove all the way out there the next night. And then I danced with 2 men at one time. They were trading me off. I learned the basic step really quickly. They traded me off and it was better than any. I took cocaine once in my life, and that was better than any cocaine high I'd ever gotten in, or that time. It was better than sex. It was better than any high. And I was thinking to myself, how can my husband possibly live up to this experience? No amount of orgasms will equate to dancing with 2 men at one time on the dance floor, you know? And I was just, I didn't sleep that whole night. The third night I went out, those 2 guys told me about this place called the Mayan in Los Angeles, and the Mayan holds 2,000 people. And I went in there and they had 2 bands playing at the same time on stage. The first band came out, then the second band came out, and then they all got together and played in an ensemble. So you have a 10-piece band with an 8-piece band. Pretty soon, it's an 18-piece orchestra on stage playing salsa music. When you walk into the Mayan, it's like walking into another world. It's like walking into Havana, Cuba at night, I guess. And I couldn't believe it. I saw all these dancers, these women dressed in beautiful gowns, dresses, high heels, long earrings, guys dressed in suits, vests, tie. I mean, I felt like I was walking into a 1950s movie. I felt like I was walking into that movie called West Side Story. It was exactly almost like that, except 1,000 people. Okay. It was incredible. And, they have, you know, drinks and they make this whole place, the Mayan, look like Aztec architecture, you know, with the Mayan ruins and the rocks on the wall and the fire coming up and the smoke and these speakers that are the size, at least 20 feet by 20 feet speakers. You can fill a room, and that's just one side. And then you have the other side where they filmed The Bodyguard. Remember Whitney Houston with what's his name in The Bodyguard? That's the Mayan. Kevin Costner, right? That's the Mayan. And when I was watching the movie, they only got a little bit of it. I mean, it has 2 floors, and anyway, so I started writing about this. I went to work. I couldn't even work. I couldn't sleep. The next day I went to work and I just started writing, blogging. I called one time, I was going out 7 nights a week because my husband was gone. And so I was going out 7 nights a week. I said, this is so much better than sleeping with some guy and cheating on my husband because there's no wet spot. I mean, the wet spots are under my armpits and on my face, you know. And so I went every night for about 2-3 months while my husband was somewhere. I don't remember. He was either in Israel or the Middle East or something. And he came back and I said, I have a new hobby. I said, not only am I going out dancing, I discovered this thing called salsa dancing. We didn't have Skype at the time, so he never called me unless it was long distance. So I spoke to him maybe once a week on the phone. He would tell me how he's doing, and that was it. And there was no email at the time. And then email came out shortly after. I think it was in 1998.
Yeah.
email came out, something like that.
Yeah.
97. So I started emailing Ben, my partner, my business partner, all these stories, and he would post them on Salsa Web with me. And when I was training the United States Air Force government personnel on how to build a web page, how to build a forum, I would show them Salsa Web, and I would say, these are all my blogs or my articles, we called them at the time. This is the forum, and I would introduce it to the generals and say, this is called a website, okay? And the generals would sit there and say, this is me salsa dancing. And there was no video. You could not upload pictures yet. I think we uploaded the first picture in 1998. So in 1993, 94, 95, 96, there was no pictures and there was no video on. You
may have been the first online salsa promoter.
Absolutely. I was not only the first online salsa promoter, I was the first website. I was the first person to ever write a story about salsa.
Wow.
I was the first person to have a salsa website. And so I started writing about it, and people from all over the world, once the internet started to get, I actually found the end of the internet one day. I was at work, and the internet started to explode. And I was clicking a link, and then I clicked another link, and I clicked another link, and I saw the attorney website that was on there. And then I clicked another link, and I went to about maybe 12 links. And then there was the end. Then there was a blank page.
I thought it was just a myth.
No, you could actually see
the end of the internet existed.
Yeah, it was a blank page, okay? It didn't even say you've reached the end of the internet. It was just nothing. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. The next week, I couldn't find the end anymore. The internet opened up to the world in 1 week. And people just started posting whatever they wanted up there. And you couldn't find the end anymore. And I'll never forget, I was at work one day trying to find the end. And it just kept going. I actually got almost sick to my stomach, wrapping my mind around how big and how vast not only it had become within a week, but the potential of it was, if you have 7 billion people on Earth, there could eventually be 7 billion pages, trillions of pages online. And I got nauseated just because I could not believe that something like this powerful has started. And that you couldn't control it. And I think that's what the military was concerned about, is because if you can't control something like this, you needed to have subwebs and another internet just specifically for the military worldwide, because the public was going to piggyback on this. And there were so many loose ends and loose holes. And that's when I got into the security of it, because when I was working with just modems at 56K, I actually hacked into the OAG, the official airline guide, just through typing in, certain passwords, admin, this and that. All of a sudden, I could book my own flight, on the official airline guide. And I kind of reported it to my boss, and she said, oh my God, we need to tell them about it. So I was also a hacker.
Wow.
I guess you could say a little junior hacker. But back then it was so easy to get into
Well, it's
everything,
fascinating that salsa was the thing that helped this develop, that particularly
Absolutely,
within the military.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would have imagined that that's the case.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, Salsa Web became a United States military government project, and they basically funded it in the very beginning. And so the military helped salsa. The military was the first promoter of salsa.
I knew I came straight to the source with you, but this is more than just the source. This is the beginning of the internet.
This is the beginning.
And so
because before I couldn't find salsa clubs. You look in the yellow pages, you look for salsa, you find picante sauce, and you couldn't find clubs. And so I started listing clubs all over the world. I was up for 36 hours one night just updating clubs. We got Toronto first, then we got Paris, Though I'll never forget those two because it blew my mind. They danced salsa in Paris. They were all Cuban style at the time. And then shortly thereafter, I eventually got laid off because we lost our contract. And they said, Edie, you can jump on another contract if you want, or you could take a severance pay. And I decided to take the severance pay and go to Europe with a friend of mine from a salsa club. And he goes, Edie, your website is being watched everywhere. This is crazy. And I said, yeah, this is amazing. He goes, you have clubs listed in like 10 countries. And I said, I know. I've given them access to the website, given them username so they can list their own damn clubs because I'm tired of listing their clubs. I staying up 36 hours just listing salsa clubs on Salsa Web. Ben was gone, and by this time, people like this guy named Elliot Lampert, who was Edie Torres's manager, called me and he said, Edie, I want to sell. I spent $100,000 making these, getting an orchestra for Edie Torres, filming several videos, VHS format for Edie Torres. We've got a timing CD. I said, who the hell is Edie Torres? And he goes, I know, nobody knows who he is. He goes, but he's this guy in New York that they call him the Mambo King. I said, what is Mambo? And he goes, okay, well, we dance salsa on two. And I said, what is salsa on two? Who is this? And he goes, and so he tried about, I would say 6 times. At first I thought he was kidding. And then I just hung up on him because everybody wanted something from me, right? Because I had not only was I the first salsa website, I had the only salsa website, okay, for years, for 93, 94, 95. I think the second one came up in 96 because nobody could figure out how to program sites in HTML. And so
I'd love to hear how that ended. How did you end up connecting with Edie Torres in the end?
Well, what happened, I never spoke to Edie Torres until, we never met officially until I flew to New York and I awarded him the world's first Lifetime Achievement Award for salsa. And that was with my business partner. And when we did the Toronto Congress in the year 1999, I believe, we flew to New York and I met Eddie then. But Elliot wanted just to get his money back because he spent $100,000 doing all this stuff for Eddie. And so he started selling videos on my website. He goes, how much do you charge for advertising? He goes, we just want them to put our phone number on there because we don't have a website. I said, okay, $50 a month. And he goes, okay, $50 a month, no problem. And then all of a sudden I put Edie Torres' phone number, I didn't know who he was, and his videos on there. And then Elliot sent me the videos maybe a few months afterward because I wanted to know what I was selling, right? Could have been porn. I had no idea. And so I watched his videos and I saw he was on the wrong count. And I thought, fuck. I said, he's on the wrong timing. Why are we selling this guy's videos? He doesn't know what he's talking about. And so it wasn't until I started to get to New York and talking to people. See, we were still counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in Los Angeles. Alex De Silva, Luis Vasquez, Francisco, all those guys taught us 1, 2, 3, hold, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, even Josie Neglia had her first videos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then Josie, when she saw that Eddie had his videos on my site, she goes, Edie, how much do you charge to advertise? And I said, $50 a month. So now I was making $100 a month from 2 people. A few months later, I found out that people, or my website was getting dinged so many times because people were reading my articles and buying Josie and Eddie's videos. And then we got Luis and Joby said, Edie, we'll put up Salsa Web on the television series called Sinbad. And I said, Sinbad, I know that. That's a nationwide thing. Are you familiar with Sinbad?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so Luis and Joby were training Sinbad on how to dance salsa. They were my instructors because I eventually started taking classes with Luis. Private lessons. I hated group classes because there was only like one good guy and you had to wait for the one good guy. So I said, fuck it. I'm just going to take privates because I want to get really good really fast. I want to be the best follower in the world. Not the best dancer because I know I'll never get that, but I want to be the best follower in the world. That I can do. And so when Luis started teaching me, it was all on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And Alex De Silva would teach 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to 24. And I thought, wow, so salsa is a 24 count, just depending on the move. And they said, yeah. And I said, okay. Then there's a lot of holes in this story that I'm skipping around. But when they started training Sinbad, who was very famous, he said, yeah, I'll put Salsa Web. I'm going to mention Salsa Web because there's all these great articles. There's places to dance salsa all over the world on there. You got your LA clubs. And so for a whole month, he was advertising Salsa Web, right? Pretty soon, I was only paying like $97 a month for my website in my server. And they were charging per click at the time. So anytime somebody clicked, not per click, I'm sorry, per download. So if I had a little tiny picture on there, by that time I could get like an emoji. They would charge me 1 cent for that emoji, right? And so I was starting to put up little emojis and pictures, and they would charge me per the picture. And so I was only paying $97 a month because I was on a fixed plan. But once I got on Sinbad, they had to put in 2 T1 lines at the servicing facility just to handle my site alone. They said that millions of people were coming to my website, and now my website was $3,500 a month I had to pay for.
Wow.
My rent was only $700 a month. So I had to shut down half the website and only leave my articles up. And I left up there, I said, please help me pay for the site. If you can just send donations or whatever, because my rate has gone up from $97 a month to $3,500 a month because you guys keep coming to my website and reading my articles. Stop. And the more people I told to stop coming here, download, print it out, but don't click anywhere. The more people I told them to stop coming to my website, the more people came. It was like taboo. So I started shutting down my articles. But they hated that. The public wanted to read my stuff because I was putting up stuff all the time. And so I said, if you want to donate, I will. I came up with this video called Cool Moves. Because if Josie was selling her videos and Eddie was selling theirs, and I wasn't an instructor yet, I was just going to come up with certain moves. So I put up my video up there called Cool Moves. And I was selling like between 50 to 100 videos a week. And I thought, holy shit. If I'm selling 50 to 100 videos a week of just me doing moves with certain random partners, not even teaching, it's just to the clave beat, how many videos are Josie and Eddie selling? That same night, or that week, whatever, I went to Denny's with Josie Neglia. And she was driving a Porsche now. And she was wearing all these furs. And she was not ashamed at all of flaunting her stuff, right? And she had been advertising with me for about maybe 3 or 4 months. And I noticed a change in her. She had moved to this huge high-rise apartment in Long Beach, California. And I was like, Josie, you're from Toronto. Wow, I like your car. I love your furs. And I said, I just had to shut my website down because it cost me $3,500 a month. And I can't do it anymore. And she said, what? And she reaches in her pocket and she says, she starts throwing $100 bills at me. 100. She goes, get that website up, Edie. And I said, oh my God. Pretty soon I started getting all this money from random people from all over the world. I got $2,500 from one person. I got like $300 from another. I started getting clave sticks in the mail. I was getting like all this money and all this stuff just to get my website back up. Elliot Lampert started paying me $5,000 a month to keep my website up. You know why? because I found out he was selling 700 videos a week of Edie Torres' videos. And I was charging him $50 a month. And I said, Jesus, he goes, Edie, you got to listen to me. We want to take Salsa Web public. Now, this was before Amazon went public. Okay. And so I said, wow. He goes, we're going to pay you $5,000 a month to keep that thing up and running, because they couldn't produce enough videos, because this was the only website selling salsa videos. Right. And, Josie told me she sold 1 million videos. And I thought, wow. In fact, she was bragging about it. Right. She was bragging about it at her thing. We went to she didn't tell me that directly. She told that to the people in the audience. Right. And I thought, wow, so she has real estate in Canada, obviously. Anyway, so we were like, I'm like, okay, I'm charging $50 a month to these people. I've got to raise your rate, And so, that's what got me the idea to start selling DVDs online later on. I sold videos as well, because I could not believe how much these guys were selling, And now she didn't sell 1 million on my website. Obviously she created her own website and then went from there, but, it was unbelievable, the volume of videos that were sold just on Salsa Web. And I was talking to Elliot, I'd like to meet this Edie Torres guy. You guys are only paying me $50 a month, but now you're paying me $5,000 a month because they wanted a piece of Salsa Web and Salsa Freak. So they said, Edie, we'd like 20%. And I said, okay. Then after a while, when Amazon started to continue to lose money and they weren't making any money right before the .com crash in the year 2000, they said, Edie, in order to keep this going, we're going to have to take 49%. And I said, okay, no problem. And it was almost identical to what happened to Facebook. I mean, when I watched the movie Facebook, I cried because that was exactly me. But what's his name? He had lawyers and attorneys, and I'll never forget, they set up Salsa Web offices in Los Angeles, in Florida, and in New York. So we have 3 Salsa Web offices, and all they were doing was sending out videos. And in fact, more people were sending me videos to send out through Salsa Web. So that's how we got our funding. They hired a president from Wall Street. I was not the president. They hired marketing managers. They hired all these people to take Salsa Web public. And they said, Edie, we're almost there. We just need, to keep the volume up. You need to keep writing articles. You need to keep going. Ben was out of the picture because he was doing movies, editing. And so I said, okay, Edie, we're going to have to, all our investors, they want a higher percentage. And stupid me, I didn't get an attorney or any second opinion because I had no idea what that meant. They said they're going to want 80%. 80%. They said, yeah, in order to keep, your $5,000 a month, you got to give them 80%. And I only got $5,000 a month for like 5 months, I think 4 or 5 months. And so, but I was holding everything, the weight of this whole website on my shoulders. And so they said, Edie, now we need 97%. I said, what do I own? They said, well, you and Ben will still have 1.5%, or 2.5%, whatever it equated to. 1.5, I think it was. And I said, well, what's going to happen? He goes, don't worry, Edie. When we go public, you're going to be a millionaire. And I said, oh, really? And they just painted the story of this thing, and they were going public. Pretty soon, there was this website called Que Pasa, that was going public. And that flopped, apparently. Nobody wanted to invest. Then all my investors got scared because they saw that Amazon was continuously losing money, but it still went public anyway, but it lost. And then the .com crash happened in the year 2000. And so they pulled out. They still retained 97% of nothing. Salsa Web was worth nothing. I was earning nothing. So I decided, okay, in order for me to make money, because I quit my job, everything was Salsa Web. I didn't opt to go back. By that time, I had already gone to Europe with this dance team that we basically created called Team Salsa Web. It was 5 of us. I put on Salsa Web where we were going. I had my guy put in a line from London to Sweden to Denmark. What was originally going to be a 3-week tour turned into a 3-month tour. We were the first people in the world to penetrate Europe with on-one cross-body lead style dancing because they were all Cuban style out there.
Yeah.
So we introduced cross-body.
Wow, that is quite a story. There's a lot of history there.
It's amazing.
It's fascinating. And so this is around the year 2000.
This was 2000. We had the first Salsa Web convention. Actually, the first Puerto Rican Congress was in 1997. 98, they had the second one. In 1999, we had the Toronto Convention. I didn't like the word Congress, so I called it the Toronto Salsa Convention. And then we awarded Edie Torres his Lifetime Achievement Award in 2000 in Washington, D.C. at the Salsa Web Convention there. I just hated the word Congress.
If I can just jump around, and I've got a lot of notes and a lot of follow-up questions. I'm just kind of typing as we go, and I'm going to try and fit it all in. And so ultimately you did achieve the goal of becoming, one of the top followers around the industry. How did that come about? How did your training evolve to put you into that position where you were known as the follower?
I did not. I guess Luis, because I have an ear for music. I'm a concert flutist, so I was in orchestras my whole life. So I really have a good ear for timing. But salsa really got to me. I couldn't figure out the timing for like 3 weeks, and I was very embarrassed. And so Luis Vasquez, who was my instructor at the time, he always said, it's so important, the timing, you got to listen. And so I had a dance partner that I was competing with before Salsa Web or anything he was rhythmically challenged. He was tone deaf. And my first husband was also tone deaf because when I threatened him with divorce because I didn't want to be with him anymore, he said, okay, I'll learn to dance. And when we went to dance merengue, he couldn't even dance the merengue beat. And neither could my first dance partner. But my first dance partner was amazing. He could do all these lifts and tricks and flips, and he knew exactly where the hits were to dip me, but he was so off time. And so I learned to follow. No wonder you got divorced.
I mean, if there's ever been grounds for divorce, it's got to be being off time.
Because you're off time.
I mean,
right, okay, anyway, because you don't know timing, right? I was so immature at the time. Anyway, so, I got a divorce because my husband was off time. He didn't even dance salsa. I mean, he was desperate to get me back. So he started taking lessons with Luis's wife, Joby. But by that time I was already competing, and I went to a club with him once, and it was just embarrassing dancing with him when all these other guys wanted to dance with me that were so good. I never cheated on my husband. I was just always dancing with other men constantly all the time, that's better than cheating anyway, You get more of a punch out of that, I think.
Sorry, I interrupted.
It was better than sex. Go ahead.
No, I interrupted. You were saying about how this follower persona of yours developed as a dancer.
Right, and so because my first partner was off time, I learned just to follow. I had to block out the music and just follow, and that was excellent training because I wanted to dance. Whether he knew the time or not, I just wanted to dance. And I didn't care whether he was a beginner or not. My goal was, if I was dancing with a beginner, and it still is, to make him look amazing. Because I saw over time how these beginner guys became incredible. And how some women would refuse to dance with these beginner guys. And then after a while, the beginner guys who got good didn't want to dance with those girls anymore.
Don't you love when that happens?
Oh my God, total vengeance.
Yeah, I love when I see that in classes, and I say this, ladies, I know what you're thinking, but you just wait. You're going to see this guy in 8 months and you're going to be like, what happened? It's fantastic.
I saw success is the sweetest revenge. And so I could see these guys come up. I taught Johnny Vasquez his first basic steps. In fact, I was talking to his wife the other day, and she said that they talk about that quite often. We were at, you know who Johnny Vasquez is?
Absolutely.
Okay. We were at Sportsman's Lodge, and Luis is his brother, right? And so Luis introduced me to his mom, who was visiting from Mexico. And I said, ¿Cómo está, señora? And she said, Edie, will you please dance with my son? And I said, I can't get to your son. Your son is always in demand by all these women. I'm sorry, even though I'm paying for private life. He goes, no, not that son. He said, Johnny. And I said, you have another son? So she has Francisco and Arturo and Luis and John. And I said, she goes, yeah, he's over there. And I saw this long-haired girl turn that way. And I said, and she goes, no, that's my son. And he turned around and he smiled, and he was missing teeth. His teeth were just all over the place. And he had long, stringy hair. And I go, he was so different from Luis or Francisco. Luis and Francisco looked nice hair, always wore suits. Everybody in LA wore suits to go dancing back in the day. You always had suits on. And the girls, if you didn't come in a dress, you were looked at funny, Dress, high heels, long earrings, long hair.
Why do you think that changed? Because that's not really how it is anymore. It's just so much more casual. Do you think that's just what's happened, just in general in society? It's gotten more informal? Or do you think?
I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I'll tell you exactly why.
I want to hear what you think.
Okay, because when I go to LA and I go to the Mayan, still to this day, the guys are dressed nice, the girls are dressed nice. It's because we have to get back to the Johnny Vasquez story, but I'll answer this question.
I've noted it down.
It's because the people who dance salsa, especially in Los Angeles, are not the wealthy to do. At least it was back then. Because the wealthy to do don't mix with the Latin people who dig ditches all day and who are taking care of other people's kids all day. So the people who are digging ditches all day want to get dressed up and go dancing and look good. The people who are well-to-do are already dressed up during the day in business suits, and girls in business outfits want to dress down and relax at some bar club. So it's the culture. It's the haves versus the have-nots. The have-nots are a lot more fun to be around. Trust me. It's like the Titanic. Remember the steerage. The Mayan, the LA, the salsa clubs is all about steerage in the Titanic. That's the type of people that went salsa dancing back then. It was not the rich. It was not the wealthy. Now, the rich and the wealthy are salsa dancing, and they're taking classes, and that's where I make my private lesson money from. You know what I mean? So the tables have turned.
That's
so now the
fascinating
rich and the wealthy,
view.
yes,
I haven't heard that before.
Source.
So you are the source. We're changing your name, Edie the Salsa Source.
Salsa Source.
Edie, previously known as the Salsa Freak. Yeah. Okay. So coming back to Johnny Vasquez, and then how did you come to teach him?
Okay. So his mom said, Edie, please dance with my son. Because I was known for always dancing with all the beginners. Okay. Because I would help them stay on time. And Luis knew that. So Luis would always throw me with these beginner guys that were coming up. And I knew they were going to become badass anyway, right? And so I would help them out. I was so nice. And I was older than most people. Back then, I think I was like 34, 32, 34, something like that.
So how old was Johnny Vasquez?
Johnny was only 17. So okay. I think he was not even 18 years old yet. So he could go to the Sportsman's Lodge because he could get in. A lot of these guys went to the Sportsman's Lodge because it was just a hotel where they had dancing, whereas they couldn't get into the Mayan because you had to be 21. And so they would all go to the Sportsman's Lodge. And so I said, okay, I'll dance with your son. And so Johnny was soloing some crazy weird Mexican step that he learned in Mexico. And I looked at him and I grabbed his hands and I went forward and back. And he couldn't speak a word of English at the time. And so then I put his hand over me like this, and I had him next to me, and I did the timing, go forward, back, and we were on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was hysterical. It wasn't until 1998 that when I went to New York to give Eddie his Lifetime Achievement Award that he was going to get later, the New Yorkers, and I saw how they danced, they shamed us into dancing 1, 2, 3, hold the 4, 5, 6, 7, hold the 8. They said, Edie, what the fuck? They said, you don't dance that way. You need a the way they would say that, Edie, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Here it's Latin, you're Latin, Manhattan, you gotta count. And I said, what do you mean? And they say, okay, Manny Severio was my New York world correspondent for Salsa Web. He listed all the sites. He is MannySeverio.com. He is a stuntman. He's a very famous stuntman. He's a stunt coordinator. He has 5 black belts. Anyway, so he was dancing mambo. He came to LA to just visit and to see what it was like out here. And he said, I can't believe all you guys are dancing on the wrong count. And we said, you're dancing on the wrong count. What do you mean this on 2? What is mambo? And they said, okay, well, it's 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. That you're still dancing on 1. True mambo is dancing 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, buddy.
That argument is still going on 25 years later.
Yes, still to this day. And so I said, you guys are dancing on 1. No, we're dancing on clave. I said, no, you're not. If you're dancing on clave, it would be 5 beats. Ba, 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 ba. You're not on clave. You're not any more on clave than we are on clave. Get a grip. And I started doing this whole article after article about the on 1 versus on 2 argument. It's so much easier to dance on 2 than on 1. Really. It's so much easier to dance on 1 than it is on 2, depending on who you're talking to. What I have found is that it's just as hard to learn on 2 as it is on 1. But moving from on 2 to on 1, I can train a guy that I've been training on 2 for a year or whatever to dance on 1 in 5 minutes. To do the other way around, the guy that I've been training on 1 for a year to dance on 2, it takes me at least 2 to 3 hours just to get him used to it.
So why do you think that is?
You know what? I don't know.
Because I've done it both ways as well, and I'm not sure that I've seen a pattern. I'll tell you what I think, or what I've seen over the years. You take someone who's been training on 1 and developing all these skills, and then you transition them to on 2, and then you start to define like, okay, he's a great dancer because he's dancing on 2, right? But you when you take into account the fact that he's been training on 1 and developing skills, timing, music, obviously lead and follow, that's been the basis, and then he's obviously adjusted to a new rhythm. That's kind of been my experience. So it's not like if you taught him on 2 to start with, he would have been as amazing as he was after he transitioned, because he still wouldn't have developed all those skills underneath it. So I've never been able to crack that. What do you think?
I know that an on 2 dancer from New York can spot an on 1 converted to on 2 dancer like that in a flash. Okay, when I lived in New York, I could see it. It's just, It's a style. They have a certain New York style. And so when I'm here in Colorado training on 2, I don't see that style. You have to be submersed in that. And so I believe that what you're saying is that if you're not around these New Yorkers who dance this style, okay, you won't be able to ever attain that style coming from on 1 to on 2 unless you live in New York and you really, really study and you go to clubs and you do nothing but watch, okay? Then you have to change. Then you also have to understand that swag, that on 2 swag, happens in the pause between the beats. I have an entire video that I did on YouTube on why that swag happens. It's because they're holding the 4 and the 8 in places within the step that's not normally held.
That's not the same as on 1. Yes.
Exactly. And so
but
you
that's
develop
what I
that
think.
muscle. Go ahead.
Sorry, there's a slight delay between us, so we're going to have in the audio that's going to be an interruption. So that's exactly what I think. Like I can, you and I can see someone who's an on 1 dancer dancing on 2. That's because they dance on 1 style, on 1 rhythm even, but doing the break on 2 and 6. They are not kind of living that pause, that different feel, and where it sits in the basic step. So you can tell that. But I also find fascinating, because obviously I know other people, you're probably one of them, where you can transition and you can dance on 2 like on 2. And then you can also dance on 1. And so I feel like, well, it's possible. So why can't we make that possible within the student? And we can, like I know, people that I've trained, they can have an on 2 feel, and they can, hold that pause in the right place, and then they can still dance. They can be, bilingual is what I call it. You can speak, French and German and not get confused. And so I feel like it's possible, but it's not that frequently attained. You can just tell that someone is like doing it, but not really feeling it.
Right. I think that if you were trained on 1, even me as a follower, even though I can follow those on 2 guys, they can still tell that I'm an on 1 dancer. And even the look is an on 1 dancer, because I was on 1 for so long. When I lived in New York, they said, wow, Edie, I could spin you so fast. Once I got the prep down, it's only because on 1, see, okay, you have the crossbody lead, and then you have the turn, and then the turn, right? Okay. So you crossbody lead, turn, you or him, crossbody lead, turn, you or him. The pause happens on 1 before and after the turns.
On the outside. Yeah.
Not in between. Yeah. There's a huge pause in the crossbody lead. That's why women on 1 can lift up their leg on count 4 in the middle of the crossbody lead. So you have the pause before and after the turns here for women, right?
Yeah.
So now, in order for me to pull off a triple spin or even a quad here or here, I have to punch. I have to be prepped. I have to be super fast. I have to almost anticipate and help my guy get me through.
Yeah.
But on 2,
you have the slow in between.
Since the pause happens in between the turn here, I don't have to try as hard to pull off that triple or quad. So because a woman has 1 more second of time, 1 full second of time in the turns here, but not in the crossbody lead. I cannot style within a crossbody lead as a woman on 2. That's why you see a lot of these on 2 dancers who will do a spin, and then they'll do a body wave right after the spin before they move on. On 1 dancers don't have that time. And so when I went to New York and I lived there after becoming one of the world's fastest spinner in LA, when I got to New York, all the guys just wanted to spin the shit out of me, because I was already spinning with less time, the same amount of spins as they did their normal girls. So I felt super light, more light than was comfortable for the leads. And they told me that. They said, Edie, you're an LA dancer, but they didn't know how to put you're fast. I can lead you in anything, but you don't have any swag. You don't have that big Puerto Rican ass that's giving you that heaviness that we need. And I looked at my ass, and it's a Mexican flat ass. Okay. And so they blamed my ass for being super fast. And the women that had these nice, beautiful, plump Puerto Rican rice and beans asses is what gave the swag. So they said, so they thought, because all they could judge was on appearance. So no, I don't have a Puerto Rican butt. I'm working on it, okay? I'm doing my hip thrusts every day at the gym just to get it a little bit round, right? But anyway, check it out. They blame my ass for being too fast. Her ass is so fast. She's got a Mexican ass. She's like a Mexican jumping bean. Boom, 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 boom. Speedy Gonzalez. Boom, boom, boom. No, it's only because I was trained as an on-1 dancer to do just as many, if not more spins than an on-2 dancer with 1 second of less time within an 8 count. Got it?
Mm.
So the guys in New York would dance with me differently than they danced with the New Yorker girls because I felt different. You see, Jason Molina, I'll never forget, we were at Side Street one night. I don't know if it's still there. And he said, damn, I don't know whether you know who Jason Molina is, but it's funny because Oliver Pineda, Jason Molina, and myself had a 2-hour discussion one night at the lobby at some hotel in Sydney back in the year 2005, I believe, just on how to execute a right turn. A simple right turn.
I would have loved to have been there.
2 hours. We were 3 of us in the lobby discussing this. Anyway, Jason, when he was dancing with me, he goes, "Where are you from? Where are you from?" So even though I was dancing on 2, even though I was in New York, even though I was training with the best for this Latin Madness, it's called, it was an off-Broadway musical called Latin Madness, and they invited Al and I to do our robot routine for the Latin Madness show that was in New York. We sold out every performance. Why? Because Al and I used to go to the subway and we used to practice our lifts and tricks and triple cartwheels and stuff like that in the subways in New York and pass out Latin Madness flyers. And people were going nuts. In fact, he used to do break dancing wars battles. They were called battles. Hip hop breakdancing battles with 8-year-olds in the train. It was crazy. He would do this, this breakdancing stuff, and little 8-year-old would come up and start battling my husband, right? And we would just watch, and the whole train subway in New York was just watching this little battle going on. And this little kid had all these kids behind him, and Al was just going after. Pretty soon we got to our stop, and we said, okay, we're going to show you something, and we're going to win this. So we went outside the subway, and we did a triple cartwheel. That's where I hold on to him, and he holds on to me, and both of us are triple cartwheeling. And we did about, 2 or 3, 4 or 5 cartwheels down the road, and all the kids had their faces smashed against the window. Oh my God, that's so incredible. So we were like the king of Subway advertising for Latin Madness. But anyway, even though I was training with the best of the best from New York, I still could not get that New York swag look or feel. And I don't believe even to this day I can. And it's very difficult.
And I'm curious, how do you, what makes you feel that? Is it their feedback, or do you feel like you genuinely kind of haven't adopted it? Why how do you define that you still haven't got it?
Well, primarily, number one, when I was really trying hard to be the best follower in the world, and I still do to this day, in New York, they would always ask me, where are you from? Where are you from? I could not get the LA out of me. I couldn't, even when I was partnered with Henry Herrera from Cuba, he would refuse to dance Cuban style with me because I just didn't feel like a normal woman. I felt like an LA style dancer, from the touch of the hand, I teach what's called a number 5 tension. And when you give that number 5 tension, it's an equal tension. Well, in New York, the girls will give a number 5 and then an 8 push down and then a pull. It's like a little tug that's very subtle. It's not taught, but because of the way they're trained, they give this rubber band tug type
on
thing.
The 6-7.
And in LA, we used to dance very heavy as well, because in cumbia, when we danced cumbia in the beginning, that's what I learned was cumbia before line style, before crossbody. We would give a little tiny, well, it was a big tug back then. But then in crossbody with all these spins, they said, you got to be lighter. You can't be pulling. So when I go to LA today, there is still a heaviness, and these guys are too rough. But when I started dancing in Europe and the levels started getting higher and higher, I started to become lighter and lighter with a short back step. So I teach short, long, long, short, long, long. So the 2 steps in between are long, and there's no, that came from New York style. And I call
so
it
you travel on the 7
style.
on 2, you travel forward on the 7 on your left.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what I teach. And with the guys, they take a big step back on their 7. And so that's not taught in LA style. They take a huge 1 and a huge 5, and then the 2 steps in between are small. Whereas I'm teaching opposite. It's more of a New York type of look and feel.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Now I'm teaching more of a European style, because the Europeans, they take a long step in between, whereas the New Yorkers, they pretty much have their steps almost in place.
Yes.
Okay, they take a short step back, a small step and a small step and a short, because the clubs are so squashed over there. There's too many people in New York clubs, so they take small steps with very little space behind them, so they keep their body over their feet. Whereas in Europe, in the congresses, there's more space. So we take a short back step, a long in between, and then a short front step. So I'm more of a European on two type of, now I will be critiqued to no end by Super Mario, by Susana Montero, by all these people who dance supposedly onto New York style in Europe. That's okay. Everybody has their own opinion, but from what I've seen overall from all the countries I've been in, that Europe has a short back and front step, a long in between step. New York has a short front and back step, shorter steps in between. LA has long front step, long back step, short steps in between. Not in place, still passing. So I like the European style because it allows for a lot of travel for the woman. The woman stays super light, not heavy. So that's kind of what I've stuck with. And I will never be able to be or look like a New York dancer. So we've adopted the European style in black belt salsa.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And
both on one and on two, by the way. Okay, it's a seamless transition on one and on two. The only difference, we still do a short one, even if we're dancing on one. Okay, just to let you know. So because I want my ladies to be super fast and super light in the front, forward, and back. Sorry.
No, there's just so many interesting things coming out of it. Like, look, I do the same thing. Like, I don't differentiate the styles. So I don't say like, dance you're on one style and then dance you're on two styles. So, the skills that I teach in between, which is whether it's the short back step, whether it's the connection, whether it's the elasticity, I'm saying it's the same skill. You're then going to apply it to different rhythms. It happens to be on one and on two that we're talking about. In some other country, it'll be on some other rhythm. And of course, New York style has a feel and a look. Yeah. But so do other styles, and so do other countries.
Exactly.
And we're talking about Europe in general, but Europe has a lot of scenes, and even within those scenes, they're different. Same as
that's why salsa is so amazing. That's why it'll never die, because everybody in their own region has their own look. It's like languages.
Yeah, exactly. There's
with
a
an
dialect.
accent.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I want is someone to be as kind of general as possible, to be able to adopt to the scene and have the skills to do that. And so, for example, like I talked to Magna in a similar interview a couple of months ago, and I followed her dancing for a long time, and I know she does that traveling style.
Yes.
As well, and that's
I saw that in 2017. I was watching her dance once. And I love watching her. I love Magna to death, and I have so much respect for her. And she was doing the short, long, short, long. In on two, we go long, short, long, short, long. Anyway, I looked at her and I thought, oh my God, you're dancing black belt salsa style. Who taught you that? She goes, nobody taught me anything. She prides herself on being self-learned. Anyway,
Sure.
So I said, okay. I said, how did you know to take a short step back and a long forward? And she goes, it's just out of necessity, dancing with likes of Terry, dancing, with all these great dancers in Europe, not necessarily New York, but Europe. They don't, if you take a long step back as a woman, you're considered heavy, slow, lethargic. And she goes, where did you learn it? And I kind of like looked around and I said, I just kind of had to start doing that in order to be the best follower in the world, because that's my whole objective, is to be the best follower, not necessarily the best teacher, not the best dancer, the best follower. And in order to be a good follower and to stay light, I had to do that. Also drag my feet on the floor. I drag my feet. Why? Because my dance partner, Jeff Camillo, who was my first dance partner, he said, no, he was my second one. Anyway, no, he was the one that wasn't off time. He's amazing. He said, I was at the Mayan once and I had these really long, spiky high heels on, as all women did, right? And I kept stepping on people's feet, toes in the back from taking those big steps.
Yeah.
And so I just decided, you know what? I'm tired of striking oil on somebody else's foot behind me and always saying, oh, sorry, right? So I said, I'm just going to keep my heels on the ground and I'm going to drag my feet for the rest of the night. Well, I was always dancing with Jeff at the time. We were favorite partners for each other. And he goes, Edie, what'd you do? You're so smooth. You're so light. You're so balanced. What did you change? Do you have your shoes on? And I said, yeah. And he goes, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. So I learned from the School of Hard Knocks. Take a small step back to stay light and airy.
Yeah.
And to drag your feet on the floor while you're dancing. I probably get the bottoms of my shoes changed at this shoe store more than any other woman I know because I drag my feet constantly on the floor to keep my balance.
Wow. And
so those two are Hard Knocks, School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And you know, like for the likes of Magna and I teach this and I've learned it from various people in different ways and have kind of come up with it is, you know, that long step helps you come back to your partner, and so helps you be ready to follow. And I call this ready by 3 or ready by 1. Be ready to be there for the next bit, and that's and then on the 7, on 2, as you come forward on the long step, that's what allows that elasticity to feel like you're kind of gliding along the floor, and so that feels really nice. But you're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not really taught or maybe kind of discussed that much that I've seen. I don't know how they teach it in Europe.
Well, what I do is I say big 7. Just take a big 7. And it's harder for the guys to do that than the girls. So the guys, what I teach the guys after their basics is I teach them what's called the demi-rock step. And you get on count 5, you go to the right of the line with your right leg, and then you step behind that right leg on count 6, and then you take your right leg and take a huge 7 and then a big 1. We call the 1 step for a man Mount Everest. It's a big mountain step. And then you just step in place and then go forward. But the demi-rock step allows her to take a beautiful 7 forward without him having to take this enormous 7 backward with his right leg. So it's the demi-rock. So we get out of her way on count 5 before 6. So we're already out of her way on 5 and 6 and 7. So we're already on the right side of the line so that she can take a beautiful long step. Because one of the reasons why women take that, you know, and I see it in on-one dancers a lot and beginners, women will actually step backward on 7. They'll go 6, 7 and then forward because the guy's in the way.
He's in their way. He's too forward. Yeah.
And I found this out in a private lesson one night. I was dancing with my private guy, and he had his girlfriend there. And he said, Edie, every time, look at her basic step. And I looked at her basic, and she was doing fine. A short 6, a long 7, 6, 7, a long 1, a short 2, etc. And he goes, but now watch when I do it with her. And he grabbed both of her hands, and he started dancing with her. And lo and behold, her long 7 was no longer there. It was in place, if not behind. And he goes, now watch when she does it solo. And he didn't tell her what she was doing. And I started looking at this on one dancers. These women would actually step back on 2. Yeah. So they step back on 1, back on 2, making them twice as heavy, but when they do solo, they would go forward on 1. And it's only because the guys would never get out of their way. That's why I teach the demi-rock step for the men to already get out of her way on her back step. Even before she steps back, he's already on the right side of the line.
Yeah, totally. I get that.
And it looks nice too.
And do you find, like, I've been doing this for 10 years, so nowhere near as long as you, but do you find that, where do you feel we're at now in the sort of on-1, on-2 New York, LA conversation? Do you feel like it's been a little bit watered down and everybody has adjusted their styles? I think it's fair to say that, on 1 of 2003-4 is almost gone, and it's been adjusted. The technique's been adjusted. The style's been adjusted. It's not as rough. It's not as fast. It's not as sharp. It's been, kind of molded between the styles, and only because everything is standardized and globalized, people now know what they do in other styles.
You're coming from Australia, where you guys
we're very far away. I get it.
You're far away, but you guys analyze shit out of everything. You guys are so into what everybody around the world is doing, and you're adopting. I'll never forget when Jamie and what's his name, Nestor came to LA to learn Millennium style from Al and I, and they flew all over the world just to get the styles down so they could build their school in Sydney or wherever it is. And so you guys have adapted out of sheer necessity, because I don't know what it is. You're down under. You're more aggressive as a nation than most people. You want to be the best, even in your sports. You want to be the best. You want to know everything what's going on, because you feel like you're at a disadvantage. It's very analogous to, and I'm not saying this as a slight to you at all. I am saying the reason why you guys are so badass. Now hear me out. Okay. The reason why Australians are so badass is because it's analogous to somebody who doesn't have their college degree, who is at the same position at a company with somebody who does have their college degree. The person with the college degree is not going to try as hard, is going to kind of kick back, go golfing more often, whatever. But the guy with no college degree sees this and says, fucking A, I got to work twice as hard, do more than this person does, because he has a damn degree. Analogy. So I'm going to be, you see what I mean?
We're the underdog.
And so you're the underdog, and you guys try harder, you work harder, you do everything more than the next guy. And I've seen it. And that's why, like, for example, when Marcia and Jamie, or was it Nestor, came in the year 2000 to our event in Los Angeles, they took my very first dance business management training course, because they wanted to know how to run a school. And that training course is only experience from me sleeping at dance owners or studio owners' homes, promoters' homes, listening, staying with them for a couple weeks, watching how they run their businesses all over the world. From 64 countries, I was able to see in hundreds of cities throughout the world because I was gone for months at a time. And I would stay the night at teachers' homes, and I would listen to them argue and complain and bitch and moan. I was in Amman, Jordan. They told me, Edie, will you please tell this guy to put on deodorant? Why me? Why don't you guys tell the teacher to put on deodorant? Well, because you're going to be 10,000 miles away tomorrow, and we just need. So I know their weaknesses. I know their strengths, and so I created this thing called Dance Business Management. And Jamie and I think it was Jamie and Nestor and Marcia came. It would have been Jamie and Marcia,
but I'm sure once they watch this, they will be in touch to correct. I'm pretty sure in the year 2000, it might have been Jamie and Marcia. I feel like Nestor wasn't dancing yet.
Oh, was he? Okay. Yeah, I knew. So anyway, they came and they took the course, and they saw how to build a school, because they wanted to create a really big school in Sydney. And they started taking notes, and they were right in the front row.
Well, the course must work, because they certainly have created, the biggest and most successful school in Australia.
Not only in Australia, but I feel the world.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think so. For them to get however many thousands of students to come to have the world's biggest dance class or something like that, where they're charging $12 a person or whatever it was to come, that was pretty amazing. I don't know. That was back in the day.
I don't know about that. I don't. That's before my time.
Yeah, it was before your time, I think. But it was amazing how the quantity of students that they could get to come to their classes. I went to their school, and it's amazing. And they teach all dances, not just salsa. They teach
they're
samba.
Smart guys, super smart guys.
Right.
And hardworking.
I think they're very hardworking. And so, you guys from Australia, when you blanketed the conversation, when you said, 2003, 4, everybody's kind of like settled into a certain style or whatever, and the on one versus on two is a non-issue. That's maybe true in Australia. And salsa is still very strong in Australia. when I wrote that article, Nestor, either it was Nestor or Jamie, told me, we haven't seen a dip in salsa in Australia at all. It is still, no, Jamie wrote it because I have a feeling is because, maybe because he didn't want to see something coming, or if I were to say something, I would speak it into existence type thing, So he said, Edie, it's still just as strong. It's stronger than ever. We've never had better classes. Because in the article that I wrote on Facebook, salsa, except for New York and except for Australia, worldwide, and I've gotten confirmation from everybody in the world, well, not everybody, I don't know about Antarctica, but most people, most of my friends are telling me, Edie, our classes have never been lower.
What year is this, Edie? When was that?
That was just this year, just a couple months ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was when I wrote that Facebook article. Remember that? You said you read it, right?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about something else. Oh, of course I read that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I get you. I'm with you. And is that, I'm going to make enemies by even bringing it up, but is that bachata or how did you understand the decline? Where do you think it's coming from?
I think that, let me tell you, there was many different points that I wrote in that manifesto. It's not really, it's kind of like a manifesto. It wasn't even an article. There's many reasons why. Okay. I think that it stems from the hustle. One of the reasons why the hustle, and I know this from Angel Rodriguez of New York, Addie and Angel always told me the hustle got too hard. What's his name? The guy, Billy Fajardo, also told me the same thing. Hustle died because it got too hard. If you couldn't lift a woman with one hand over your head and do a spin, I mean, back in the what was it, the 70s with Saturday Night Live, it was very strong. But any dance that gets too hard or too difficult is going to slide back down. You have a dance, in here. But it's like a pendulum, and this is where salsa is. It's like a pendulum. Yeah. And the salsa just got way too much at the pendulum. Pretty soon salsa if you couldn't dance to the super fast songs, and if you weren't a gymnast on crack and 19 years old, with a guy on steroids that could lift you and you couldn't do 50,000 spins, like look at Junior and Emily. I always told, I love them to death. I think they're an incredible, do you know who Junior and Emily are? Of course,
yeah.
All right. They were never able to win a World Cup competition when I was around because they just danced too fast to too fast songs. And you couldn't appreciate their moves and everything that they did, even though they worked harder than everybody else. The people that always won slowed it down a little bit, had more style, had more finesse, more, Oliver is amazing. He's got that style. He's got that attitude. He's got his jacket flaring out, stuff like that. Junior would never have it, would never wear a jacket that flares out, He's got to be the fastest. He's got to put her into how many turns can Emily do in 5 seconds type thing, okay? Whereas Luda probably couldn't hold a candle to what Emily could do. But they kept winning over those two because of the style, because of the classiness, because of that salsa thing. Junior and Emily set the bar higher. I don't accuse them. I am just saying they were so incredible that everybody wanted to be like them. For example, in Korea, I went to Korea 7 years in a row. And I was always teaching on one. I was in Korea when there was only maybe three clubs in Seoul, Korea. Now there's hundreds of thousands of people dancing in Seoul, Korea. Anyway, the 7th year that I was there, Junior and Emily came in, and that was the last year they invited me because now they wanted to do this whole on-two thing with Junior and Emily and do these super high spins and all this craziness. So then the Koreans went from on-one to on-two. And now it was all about how fast can you spin her? How much can she do? What are all the tricks? Are you fast enough? And pretty soon, only the women who were a certain body shape, a certain weight, a certain size were the ones that everybody was looking up to in salsa. At the same time, people are eating more sugar. They're eating more McDonald's. The women are getting bigger. They can no longer keep up. So you know what they want to do? I hate saying this, but I always say bachata is for the people who are not of that super slim 19-year-old look. You know what I mean? And so since more and more people want everything now because of social media, one click, look on YouTube, oh, I got the move, done. They don't want to put the time and effort that we did when we were just learning into salsa as they do bachata. Time and time again, I talk to instructors all over the world that say, Edie, the female salsa dancers are not as good as they used to be. Why is that? Well, it's obvious. Have they learned bachata first? Yes. Well, you learn a certain heaviness in bachata. It's like that Puerto Rican rice and beans butt. In bachata, the look requires a heaviness, a sultry, sexy, heavy type look. The body waves. There's no speed and no lightness required in bachata. Not yet. The pendulum is swinging that direction now. Okay. Even bachata is starting to get a lot visually difficult.
Yeah.
Right. So that pendulum that was nice and calm now is starting to move this way, and pretty soon it's going to slide down. So check it out. Bachata is a lot easier to learn. I can teach somebody bachata in literally an hour. Okay. Whereas salsa, it takes about 30 hours to become really affluent in it. That's why I sell 30-hour packages for salsa. So bachata's cheaper to learn. It's easier to learn. Anybody could do it. It's just a 4 count. There's no on 1, on 2. There's no high speed spins or turns, at least not yet. Not to this. I mean, it's starting to get that way, right? But anybody can do it. You know, the woman that's just had 3 kids that just wants to find a man that night, or the guy that just wants to get laid. And all the guys that could not stand bachata before have told me, Edie, I gotta learn bachata. Why? Because the women love bachata. I can't stand the music. I can't stand the dance, but I love women. And so I have to go where the women are.
It's a problem.
And I said, okay, right? I want to get laid. I don't want to put a woman through 50,000 turns, you know? So I don't teach bachata in my school, not anymore. We used to teach half the hour bachata and then half salsa. And we used to have our social at night, salsa and bachata. But ever since I wrote that article and I had a real sit down with my team of instructors, 12 or so instructors that I train to teach. And they said, Edie, the only reason why we're doing bachata is because you're playing it. I said, what? Yeah, we have to learn bachata because you're having us teach bachata. Well, isn't that what the people want? They said, no. They come to Black Belt Salsa to learn salsa. So stop teaching bachata. And I thought, oh my God, that's music to my ears. They can learn bachata anywhere else, any other night of the week. But I'm only going to teach salsa from now on. And if somebody wants me to teach bachata, I'm not a very good bachatera. I'm happily married. I don't want some guy's legs between my crotch, you know, or vice versa. Out here in Colorado, the guys, my students tell me that they don't like bachata because of how aggressive the women are out here. I don't know what's up with these women in Colorado, but they drink beer. When they go biking, they dress just like the guys on their 10 speeds. When they go hiking, they look just like men. When they go skiing, you can't tell a woman from a guy on the slope. So out here in Colorado, these women look and act like men. And the guys have told me that time and time again. Edie, I don't like Colorado women. Why? Because it's like
I have to come and visit.
Guy.
Sounds like quite a scene.
And so when these girls now can start to dance bachata, they pull these guys' groins right up to their groin, and they wiggle. And the women are actually leading the men. Not all of them, but a few of them are. And you can't do that in salsa. at all. Okay. So these women like bachata because they can get their sex on out here and go back to being men at their jobs and hiking up in the mountains. You see what I mean? And so I've had about 5 men tell me that about how aggressive the female bachateros are out here. And I don't want to teach that. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I'm a purist, and I'm sorry. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate. All right. And I'm not saying every woman does that. Every woman does that. But it's very difficult to do that in salsa. Salsa is a little bit less, it's a lot less groin activation type thing. Okay. It's more of an innocent dance than, I would say kizomba or bachata or even, I like zouk. But those dances are really very popular. A lot of people are moving to those because they're easier than salsa.
I mean, bachata is very popular in Australia and has progressively gotten more and more popular. So like if you looked at the number of, dancers, of like salsa dancers and bachata dancers, the bachata dancers are growing in numbers faster than salsa. Now salsa is still overall, as a percentage, like overall volume of people, the majority of people still start salsa. That's how it works in Australia. Like I have a salsa and bachata school. We're still predominantly a salsa school, but nobody starts bachata. Everybody starts salsa.
Oh, wow.
And
that's fantastic because
they
can carry
bachata.
those skills to bachata, right?
Sure. Look, that's the idea. That's my ideal. But I tell you what's happening faster and faster is they transition way earlier than they used to. So they'll come to salsa, they'll do a beginner's course or whatever, and, then they'll try a bachata class and they'll be like, wait a minute, this is so much more fun and easy, right?
Right.
And so I feel like people transition earlier, and, there's nothing wrong with that. But bachata is definitely growing. But I was just thinking on your point around, the kind of bachata dance relationship. I feel like, in my experience, a lot of this issue is to do with the performance culture. So I feel like sometimes, because bachata is, obviously, I do know how it is out there a little bit, and the performance aspect of bachata and dancing in general is huge. And so sometimes I find that especially young dancers start to perform very early, they're acting out this sensual bachata dancing. They're not necessarily even feeling it, but obviously because they're trying to perform, they're carrying out these moves and the looks and the connection that isn't necessarily that real. It's like, this is how it's supposed to look, obviously, because it's an act. Right. And then I feel like that is then taken to the dance floor. So I've seen, a lot of people kind of act out this super sensual dance that they're having with someone, but like it's like, it's not real. They haven't had a chance to develop that super sensual connection yet. It's just like, hey, this is the way we dance it. And it's like, starts off like that straight away, like kind of wild and sexy. And, sometimes I watch it and I don't dance bachata very much, but I watch it and I'm like, you couldn't possibly have already felt all that yet. It's almost like, this is the way we're supposed to dance. And I feel like obviously social media is contributing to that, because the popularity of the videos that are out there are generally the ones that are, super, super sexy and attractive to look at. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think the challenge in our industry, compared to, other scenes, is it's tend to be applied into real life very quickly. So you kind of like see that on YouTube and you're like, hey, I'm going to do that. Like if you watch, car racing, or even you're into fighting sports, you're going to be careful about how you apply that to your real life, because it's pretty serious. And you may realize the difference between a professional and entertainment versus, I actually do this to a real human tomorrow. Right. So I feel like that's got to be a big part of it, because, the dancers are so young, not in age, in experience and maturity. It feels like, hey, this is how it goes. And I think in the old days, salsa gave people more time to learn and get accustomed to and develop and appreciate, the technique, and just appreciate that I'm not going to be good in 14 weeks. It's gonna take longer than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think people get that. They don't see, wow, this is taking freaking long to learn. I want to be the Matrix and just download it, And back in the day, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have, instant access to anything. And so we took time. We went out dancing. We learned from other people. There wasn't even classes back then, we started to do classes later, 1 hour before the club. So yeah, it did take time, and it took a lot of failing. It took a lot of being dropped on the floor, falling, starting over again, crying, emotional, there was no books, there was no videos. It was just trial and error pretty much, and so now I think that's another reason. And so my whole quest right now is to make salsa easier. Like, for example, I dropped the idea of on two New York style, where the guys do a swing down with their arm. Before they turn her right, they swing down, and then they swing up, and then they turn her right. At the same time, he does a rock step backward on 6. That's natural. That's a typical New York. Swing down, swing up, and turn her right. I had to drop that because we were losing students at white belt 2nd degree, which is where you learn that. And the guys just could not get the swing down, swing up, turn the girl, while at the same time stepping back to save their life. And that's what I was thinking, why do we keep losing students at white belt, white 2? Not all of them, but a lot of them.
And how far along is that in their dancing?
That's, hold on, they go through white belts. So that's about a month into their dancing. So right now, so when they first learned dancing, they learned the left turn, just a simple left turn, how to turn her left, how to turn him left. That's month 1, because that's very easy. Boom, boom, turn, right? But right turns are a lot more difficult than left turns. So we teach that in the 2nd month. How to do right turns all the way down the body. We start the high hand, then we do the shoulders, then we do the hips, then we do the tailbone, low hand, all that stuff for a solid month, just turning her right and turning him right. So we train our guys in black belt to turn themselves just as often as they turn her, because too many times the girl will do 200 turns in one song and the guy might do 5, So we train the guys to turn just as much as the girls. But that the prep to turn her was just killing us. And I said, screw it. We're not going to do the prep anymore. You know why? It's because I had a student move to Dallas, Texas. And he came back to Colorado to visit. His name is Steve. And I said, Steve, can you please teach our white 2 group? Because he was an instructor. And he said, you got to refresh my mind on how to do a right turn. I said, what do you mean? You're dancing on a dance team in Dallas, Texas. You're Mr. Badass Salsa dancer when you come out here. What do you mean you forgot how to teach a guy's prep for a right turn? And he goes, what count do you go up on? And I said, Steve, aren't you doing that? And he goes, no, we just go up on 1 and we turn the girl. I said, what? I said, you don't swing down, up, rock step, then turn. He goes, no. But yet I could dance with him just fine. I could follow him fine. I didn't even know that he wasn't doing that freaking rock step turn doohickey. And I said, screw it. And after I wrote that Facebook manifesto thing, I said, why am I killing myself trying to make these people look like New York dancers when 0.01% will ever go to New York? Who cares? Who gives a shit if they go down, then up, then turn the girl? Really? Is that going to make them have more fun? No. It's going to stress them out even more. And if bachata is easier and more fun, then I got to figure out how to make salsa easier and more fun. Whether I embarrass myself because I'm not teaching classic New York prep right turn style or not, those New Yorkers are not paying my bills. You understand? My students want to just have fun. They don't want to have to stress out and quit salsa and move to bachata because they can't get the swing down rock step right just to look like a New Yorker. You understand? That's the problem with On 2, is because On 2 has a lot of little nuances that I picked up when I lived out there in New York. I lived in the Bronx. I lived with Nelson Flores in his attic with my husband. learning all this on two shit. And here I'm trying to teach this in Denver, Colorado, and it's not working because they don't see New Yorkers do that in the clubs out here. You know what they see in the clubs out here? Bachata. They see merengue. And oh yeah, a little bit of salsa. And they don't see that swing down and up because most of the salsa dancers out here dance on one until I came along. Now I would say it's about 50-50, okay? But nobody sees that New York swag, that New York look. So why the hell am I teaching something that's so hard to teach? You know, you have to take a 6-week course in New York just to get that swing down. We don't do that. They only have they do high hand shoulders for the first 2 weeks and then low hand. They only have 3 weeks to learn that, half the time. And they don't see it in the clubs. So I've had to adapt to the Denver dancers. And there's not a big Latino population out here. And those that are Latino are doing bachata, not salsa. And those that are Latino are doing cumbia at the Colombian clubs, not New York style on two. And so it's like, okay, what do I fight with? And those people that are doing kizumba and zouk are all the wealthy to do people that want to do something obscure and ethereal. You see what I mean? They're not even Latin. So that's the reason why I've had to really focus on simplifying salsa. On Tuesday nights, we do a Facebook Live, and I show my instructors learning the simpler ways of doing salsa. We put a line on the floor. We keep it simple because I don't want to lose any more students to bachata, you know, because of this whole instant stuff.
I think, you know, what you're experiencing as I speak to people, and you know a lot more people than I do, is probably experienced by a lot of, you know, scenes around the world. And I know for me, the battle continues. I haven't given up. I tell you what I'm doing is, you know, I just apply the theory of, like, I totally agree. You know, it can't be too hard, and we can't set it up to be something that's beyond the capacity of a civilian. You know, if you have to be a trained gymnast to carry this out, there's something wrong, because this is, after all, a social dance.
Exactly.
And this other stuff was developed later for, you know, complexity that is outside of the design of the social dance. So Junior and Emily, you know, wanted to be professional superstars. That's a different goal to having an enjoyable dance with another human, you know, same as Oliver. And so I try to bring it back to, like, is this necessary to have an enjoyable dance doing 6 spins? You know, probably not. Can we get everyone comfortable doing 2 or 3?
Right.
And I kind of combine the practicality of it with really developing a passion in people to want to learn. Like, it's fascinating. Over the years, I see a lot of students, you know, not cross over to bachata. Not that that's the goal, because if you can find your passion and you can love what you're doing and you can dance for the next 10 years, that's amazing, whatever that happens to be. You know, like I always say for myself, you know, my life is 100% salsa now, and that's it. But I also truly believe it could have been something else. Like, I could have stumbled upon tango and I would have become passionate and obsessed with that had it happened like that. And so
I agree.
You know, that tells me that, you know, it's fine. Whatever you decide, whatever kind of happens to you and whichever path you go down, it's fine.